From the Camel Clutch blog in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, this is Meet the Pro Wrestling Press with Eric Gardjula. Our issues this week.
So I came out here to tell you, face to face, man to man, that when I cash in my Money in the Bank contract, you'll never see it coming.
Randy Orton wins Money in the Bank. Does he turn heel? Was he the right choice to win the briefcase?
Not even! The Grim Reaper himself, starving to get his hands on my warrior soul, can keep me from hearing the battle cries of the warriors in the WWE Universe.
The Ultimate Warrior is back. Is this the start of the road to the WWE Hall of Fame for the former champion?
I select Daniel Bryan.
Wow!
Yes! That's huge!
Daniel Bryan is red hot going into SummerSlam, but is he truly over? Insights and analysis from Brian Fritz, host of Between the Ropes and member of Pro Wrestling Media for over a decade. Welcome to the very first edition of the Meet the Pro Wrestling Press podcast, and I couldn't think of a better way to start this off than with one of my old buddies, a guy that has been part of the pro wrestling media now, I'm going to say for well over a decade, a guy that shared space with me over at the, I'm going to guess the now defunct Upbeat magazine many years ago, and a guy that you've probably heard on more audio outlets talking pro wrestling than you even realize. His name is Brian Fritz. He's with BetweenTheRopes.com, among many other projects. Brian, welcome to the first podcast here.
Appreciate it, man. I get to be first for something. I like it.
Yeah. This is going to be fun. So for those of you checking it out, this is our first podcast. What we're going to do is we're just going to throw some topics around, debate a little bit, and then towards the end of the podcast here, Brian, I'll give you some time if you want to update the listeners here as to what you're doing. And for those of you that are enthralled by your opinions and want to follow every word you say after the podcast, you can let them know where to find you.
Okay, that sounds great, man. Yeah, and we promise no fist fights.
No fist fights. Well, we're separated by quite a few thousand miles, so I think we'll be all right.
For now, we are.
That's right. All right, Brian, we are doing this interview on the Tuesday after Money in the Bank, so I think it's probably appropriate to start out with Money in the Bank here. You know, Randy Orton won Money in the Bank, and, kind of a surprise, depending upon whether you read Reddit or not, but that's something we'll get into later in the podcast here. But Randy Orton wins Money in the Bank. There's a lot of talk right now about whether he's going to turn heel, when he's going to cash it in. First, Brian, what did you think of Orton winning it? Good choice, bad choice, and how do you think this plays out?
I really wasn't surprised, just from the standpoint of the way that WWE does a lot of their booking, from the standpoint that Orton had been losing some matches as of late. They're good, strong matches, but you could tell that they really wanted to do something with him. So I didn't pick him to win it, but I really wasn't surprised. And I don't think I have that big of a problem with it. I know some other people weren't fond of it, but they still found a way to get Daniel Bryan into the main event spot at SummerSlam, and it just kind of opens up more avenues and saying, okay, Bryan didn't win Money in the Bank. That's not the way he earned his title shot, but somebody else has that hanging over everybody's head, and you kind of have that idea right now that you don't know when Orton's going to cash that in. You have that with anybody that wins that match, but you also have this extra element of Orton, like you said, this is a guy that has been rumored to be turning heel for a while. So you don't know when he's going to do it, how he's going to do it, is he going to turn? So I really don't have that big of a problem with it. And I think Orton has been producing some of his best work in a long time over probably the last 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on this backlash that Orton continues to have? And I don't get it. And let me say this, and I'm curious on your thoughts on it. I was an Orton hater for a while. I found him to be rather monotonous. I really wasn't digging his style, but something happened at some point, and I think it was that series of matches that he had with Christian where he just turned it up and took it to another level. And I've been a fan since. I think the guy's just been outstanding. I think he's been a hell of a model citizen since that time because he went from being that megastar to just being in these mid-level programs, putting over whoever it is that they put in front of him. But yet, Orton wins Money in the Bank, and you had a whole bunch of people on the social media world saying, oh, not again, not even realizing that the guy's never even won a Money in the Bank.
Right. I think that Randy Orton has just become a lot more comfortable with himself. I mean, for the longest time, he's always said, I don't like being a babyface. And then, you know what? He kind of accepted it and has done some really good stuff with it. He's never going to be that traditional happy-go-lucky, look at my big grin kind of babyface. And he's kind of found a way to put it, in his own terms with how he really is. Yes, he is a lot more of a natural heel, but I think he's come to accept that. I think he's kind of fought that for a while and was very upset about it, but I think he's just found a way to become a lot more comfortable in his own shoes going, you know what, I can be the fan favorite, and I can kind of put it in my own persona. I can find a way to make it my own to where it doesn't compromise who I really am. I think what you're seeing out there right now is who Randy Orton really is as a person, and we've seen him, turn up the dial when it comes to what he does in the ring.
Yeah. Do you think that enough time has passed for another Cena-Orton program, whether it's Night of Champions this fall, whether it's something saved for WrestleMania, or do you think it's still been a little too soon since their last program?
Probably a little bit too soon, but I don't know if that's the program we're going to get. I think we're going to get a Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan program.
Yeah.
I don't know if they want to do this because they've done something very big, obviously, when it came to Dolph Ziggler after WrestleMania. But in my own mind, and, we always come up with like these ideas that we think are great and WWE doesn't do them. But right. I really think that, you could build up for this match between Cena and Bryan at SummerSlam. Daniel Bryan wins the match. It closes the show. Cena leaves the scene, let Bryan kind of have his moment to enjoy it. And while he's going nuts and the crowd's going nuts, Orton jumps the rail and he hits Bryan from behind in the head with the briefcase, knocks him cold, says, hey, get a referee out here. And next thing you know, he's done a heel turn. He's taken out Daniel Bryan just like that. The crowd would go nuts, hating his guts, going, oh, my God, look at this guy. He has spoiled Daniel Bryan's moment. I mean, I could easily see something like that where they could do it on the pay-per-view or maybe they even carry it over to the next night on Raw. But, something like that to me would get super, super heat.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I actually wrote something similar in my blog today because you look at the big picture here and everybody's talking about this eventual Orton heel turn, but any kind of a heel turn or screw job on Cena will probably wind up turning him into a bigger babyface. So I can't see him, if they are going to go down this road with this heel turn, Daniel Bryan's got to be the guy because if he winds up pulling something against Cena, I don't really see it working.
Yeah, I totally agree. Nobody's going to care as much,
right.
Especially if you're in a crowd like you were in Philadelphia. Now, mind you, Los Angeles is a different crowd than what you're seeing in Philly, than what you've seen in Chicago and some of these other cities. I don't know what kind of reaction Cena gets in L.A. I don't think it's as harsh as what he gets in some of these other places. So I don't think if and when Randy turns, it can't be against Cena.
That's a great point. You're right, absolutely, with the whole Los Angeles element there. That is a great point. Something I didn't think about before. Yeah, that it really sets up. There's a lot of possibilities, as you said. Do you foresee this as some kind of this quote unquote epic showdown with Orton and Cena at WrestleMania?
You know what? They could do that. They're still so long out that, there's been a lot of talk about when are you going to actually pull the trigger, if ever, on a Cena Taker match. And I don't know if this is going to be the year for it, but it could if it was going to be Taker's last one.
Yeah.
But I think that would be the smarter route to go, is that if you're not doing Taker against Cena, and right now you're going to say you do Daniel Bryan against Randy Orton, then I think you can drag it out and there would be enough time then where you could do Orton against Cena at WrestleMania next year. It would mean something, and I think people would be into it again.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I think you have this, this minority of the quote unquote smart internet fans. I hate those terms because I like to think I'm a smart fan and I have access to the internet, but I also like to think that I'm a little more rational than some people. And I'd like to think you are too. But you have that again, that voice out there that are groaning at the thought of an Orton Cena match. But I think when you look at the big picture and you look at the casual fans, and you look in the audience, and you look at who's going to WWE events these days, who's buying these pay-per-views, who's following the product, I think a Cena Orton match, if done right, could be huge with the public in 2014. I really do.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, just look at what happened at the last pay-per-view, Money in the Bank. What were people saying? Wow, the build-up for Cena against Mark Henry has been pretty good, but man, once they get in there, that's going to be awful. They had one of the best matches of the night.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I live in the Philadelphia area, and Philadelphia is such a funny town because, a guy like Mark Henry is a guy, they probably would have booed 6 weeks ago, but then he comes out against Cena, and he's one of the most popular guys on the show. It's a funny city here when it comes to who they pledge their allegiance to, so to speak.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Can you imagine if you guys get WrestleMania?
I mean, I don't know, man. It would be nuts here. It's an interesting town here, and if they went, I mean, obviously they wouldn't be going with Cena Orton this year, but maybe they save Cena Orton for WrestleMania 31, and it comes here. I don't know how something like that would play out, but yeah, it would be pretty. I mean, you live in a city that has had WrestleMania, so what's it like there? How crazy does it get?
It's awesome, man, because it kind of takes over the city, and I've been to 6 or 7 in a row now, and it's interesting to see every time, to see how it engulfs the city, because there's been some places where as soon as you land, if you fly in, that you'll see signs at the airport, you'll see banners out on the road. Even this past year, when I went, right there, in New York, New Jersey, you go to the hotel. I'm staying in New Jersey, and you go there, and there's banners right there in the lobby. Your hotel key and it's not like the official hotel where all the WWE's talent is staying. It's just another place, and guess what? Your hotel key has got Rock and John Cena on it.
That's awesome.
It's just incredible just to see how it takes over a city and how many people that even are wrestling fans are aware of WrestleMania if it's in their area.
That's very cool. So, you and I, we touched on it a little bit. Daniel Bryan and John Cena, the match is made. They're going to SummerSlam. Who wins?
I think Daniel Bryan's going to win the match. I mean, I think this is going to be a prelude to something else. I think Cena doesn't need the belt. He's had it since WrestleMania. I think that's long enough. And I think they can go in a lot of other different directions if Bryan wins the belt here.
I agree with you. I've had this wrestling booking fantasy, so to speak, over the last several weeks that Cena would hold the belt going into WrestleMania 30 and wrestle Undertaker in kind of a streak versus streak kind of matchup. But I love the idea, but at the same time, talking to you and just reading and hearing the vibe on the internet, it just seems like it would tie up the belt a little too much to keep it on Cena all the way through WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think it would, but everybody's dream scenario was, Daniel Bryan. Is it going to be that bad?
Right.
If Cena wins or, beats Daniel Bryan and retains the title. I don't think it would be horrible, but I think it is time to get the belt off of him, and get another guy over, cement him as a main event player, because you just need that. You've got Cena there, you got Orton there. Who else can you put in there? You've got Punk in there. Jericho, you can always kind of slide him in there or not, and Jericho's he's not going to be at SummerSlam. He's getting ready to go on tour with his band.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got to establish some other guys in there. Daniel Bryan's one of their hottest acts that they've got right now. He's held the World Championship before, but now put him in there and cement him in there as a WWE Raw main event kind of talent.
All right. I'm going to ask you this about Daniel Bryan, and I've taken some heat on this. I've even lost some friends over this argument, so hopefully that doesn't happen here today. Is Daniel Bryan over? And I don't mean over with the audience, but is Daniel Bryan over?
From a standpoint of a selling point that people will go out of their way to spend money on him?
Yes.
He's getting there, but I don't think he's there yet. I'm with you in that regard because obviously WWE likes him a lot. And I know some people will be like, they're not that big. I know for a fact that Vince McMahon has been huge on his act for a year and a half to 2 years, ever since he started the nose, that he was big on him, that he loved him.
Right.
It's just molding him putting him into a main event talent. And is he going to be that kind of guy that people are going to say, you know what, I'm a big fan of him, but now I'm going out of my way to say I want to spend money specifically to go see him? I think they're getting to that point, especially when it comes to going to see him on a Raw. Or, if it's the right match, then maybe. He's not there yet, but, I mean, he's on the cusp. I think if they do a couple of things right, he wins a couple more big matches, You see so much personality off of him that you never saw before. I think if they keep going down that route, he has these big matches on pay-per-view, and you back off some of the jokes at him, then yes, then I think he can be a kind of draw where people will spend money for him, but he's not there yet.
I think that's a very fair answer. Yeah, that's the answer that I've been giving people, and I look at the ratings, and of course you get the Bryan diehard fans that are saying, "Well, ratings don't mean anything. What are you bothering looking at ratings for?" I mean, how else do you measure? What else is indicative of success these days as far as a draw? The ratings, the buy rates, house shows, and yeah, I'm with you. I think the potential is certainly there. Absolutely, Vince McMahon believes in this guy. I mean, he's not doing this to placate the minority. He's doing it because he sees money in him, and I think rightfully so. I've always liked him, always been a fan. But, again, I agree with you 100% in that, for somebody to tell me that Daniel Bryan is this over megastar right now, I think it's a wait and see. I think we have to wait and see how it goes from now until SummerSlam. And by the time that he gets in the ring with Cena, if everybody's doing their jobs right, and he has that opportunity to shine, I think he definitely could be over, and I think he could be a difference maker. I think it just takes time, but for people to expect this overnight, I think they're not really looking at the hard numbers.
Yeah, I mean, there's baby steps that go along the way. I almost equate with Daniel Bryan in getting into this role right now. Go back years ago to how Triple H became a made man. I mean, it took a long time for him to get there as well, and it took some big wins. You got to remember that this guy not only had to win the belt, but people didn't really buy into him then.
Look at The Rock.
What really got Triple H as a main event guy was, number one, the Royal Rumble match that he had against Cactus Jack at Madison Square Garden, where he took an absolute ass-kicking in that match.
Yeah.
But he earned everybody's respect because he did that, and because Cactus was over so good. And then on top of that, when they had the rematch at Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, and look at The Rock. Look how long it took The Rock to get over.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know what? You could see, okay, this guy's now becoming a main eventer, but there's a difference between being a main eventer and being a draw.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, there is. I'm talking about Daniel Bryan. I'm talking to Brian. Getting a little confused there. Let me reel it back in here. There's a new spoiler in town, Brian, and it's not the spoiler that we watched when we were a kid, or that you could find on those Georgia.
The masked man out there on the streets.
Yes, the man that we watched on Georgia Championship Wrestling. Maybe I did. I'm a little older than some people listening to this broadcast. It is not him. There's a man on Reddit who is spoiling WWE finishes for everyone, and this is the guy that's been on Reddit now for a couple of months, and a fascinating story in that he keeps putting these spoilers out there, and even when they're just out of whack, it's something you wouldn't expect, they're right, and it appears that the WWE really doesn't care because, in the past, I mean, I'm sure you remember stories where you'd have a leaked finish get out, and then all of a sudden they script another finish to swerve everybody, and it's like, now, they don't care. What do you make of this Reddit spoiler? Do you think they're going to catch them? And at some point, do you think WWE is even going to care?
I think they're quietly going to try to go out of their way to catch the person because they get tired of things like this. They want to be able to control the information. And I can't blame them for that.
Yeah.
But I don't think they want to make it into some big deal to where people think that they're just pulling their hair out about it. I am impressed from the standpoint that they're not, panicking and saying, well, somebody's got this out there and they've been right and we see this trend. Because I know there was a lot more emphasis put on this story because of the article on Deadspin.
Right.
But it's been out there for a little while that this has been going on. And I think WWE now has to pay closer attention to it. I'm glad that they have not panicked, though, and changed a lot of finishes for matches and say this is the direction we're going and that's the way it's going to be. But I think there is going to be more of an emphasis now on catching this person.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have absolutely zero idea who it is, but I mean, it could be anybody as simple as a writing assistant that gets the scripts to copy and send out and pass out. And for somebody like that, you give everybody different finishes and see who posts on Reddit, and then you'll find who your culprit is.
Absolutely. It's just, I still think it's crazy that there's a site that will actually take money for gambling on wrestling. I mean, I saw it years ago, but I hadn't seen it in a while, and in this day and age, for somebody to take bets on wrestling, that's amazing.
It's amazing. I'll tell you what, though. I wish that something like this was around when I was in high school, because me and my buddies, we used to make bets in lunch all the time on the big WWF shows. If I had something like this, I'd be cleaning up in high school.
I knew another site that did it about, I want to say like Yeah, almost 10 years ago. I know of a site that did it about 10 years ago, and then, but you couldn't like do big time bets. Like they put a cap on it.
Yeah.
But
yes, you're right. I do remember that. Yes.
But even them, I mean, they only did it for like so many months, and then they just said, you know what, we don't think this is going to be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Are you inclined to go look at spoilers? Because honestly, I'm really not. Knowing that this guy's posting these finishes, I really don't care. Unless I was going to go place a bet on it. I personally, if I knew they were there and I'm buying the show, I'd rather go in and make my predictions on my blog and my podcast, but not know what the finish is going to be and be surprised.
Yeah, I'm with you there, because I've not gone to Reddit one time to find out what this person picked. And a lot of times, unless I think something really big has happened, I don't even like to look at SmackDown spoilers. Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe I'm just one of those rare breeds. Now, next week is going to be weird for WWE because they're going to be going on an overseas tour. So they're going to be taping, like they're doing Raw Live, they're taping a Raw, they're taping 2 weeks of SmackDown, and they just have to do that for their scheduling. So, it might be kind of tough to avoid some of that. But for the most part, I try to stay away from spoilers.
Yeah, same here. Another big piece of news this week. He's back, Brian. He's back again. I'm sure it's a story you've talked about several times over the years on your radio shows and your podcast. The Ultimate Warrior. He's in. He's out. He's in. He's out. He's back again doing promotion for this WWE 2K14 game. What does it mean? And do you think that this is the first step to the Ultimate Warrior taking his place in the WWE Hall of Fame?
I do. And I know no deal has been worked out yet with him in the WWE. And that's still going to be a difficult negotiation, considering I'm probably the amount of money that Warrior wants. And if he ever found out how much money Bruno Sammartino allegedly got, then I think that's going to make that only more difficult.
Yeah.
But I do. I think that as long as nobody really goes too crazy, I think everybody is kind of keeping their sanity on this right now when it comes to Warrior and WWE, which, as we all know, can probably change at a moment's notice.
Right.
But I do. I think we're going to see Warrior go into the Hall of Fame next year.
Yeah, I don't get it. And I grew up in that era. I watched The Ultimate Warrior, and I really don't get the fascination with him other than just this whole taboo aspect to him, that he's such a character and all that behind-the-scenes stuff. I really don't get the whole fascination with the Warrior.
Well, it's just, the music, the running out. It was the entire act. I mean, it wasn't obviously the matches.
Right.
But when you just looked, it was this big, bulked-up, wild guy with face paint, the big hair. The music would hit. Everybody could identify with it. He would come running out. He'd go wild on the ropes.
Yep.
He'd get blown up even before the match started. I mean, it was the act. I mean, because, if you look at his the bulk of his career where people knew him, what was it, 4 or 5 years in WWE?
Yeah, not even that much.
Right, I mean, but it's just amazing to show how big you can become in just a short period of time. I mean, and we've seen that before with other guys too. And Doink the Clown was a perfect example. Never as big of a star, but when you think of Matt Bourne, you think of Doink the Clown.
Right.
Well, Doink was only there for a year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Goldberg. Everybody talks about Goldberg as some legend, and what did he have? Like 3-4 years in pro wrestling?
Right, and it's funny because like in a podcast that I did on my side on Between the Ropes. We talked about this the other day, that somebody brought up who was the bigger star. They compared Goldberg or who was more deserving of going in the Hall of Fame, Goldberg or Ultimate Warrior. And I said, Ultimate Warrior, he was a bigger star.
Yeah.
He just was.
Yeah, I agree. Did anybody disagree with you on your podcast?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Steve was he wouldn't. It wasn't a defiant disagreement, but he thought he could make an argument. I was like, I don't really think there's an argument to that.
Nah, I don't see that. I will say this. I'm not sure if you saw the video, but Warrior still looks pretty damn good for a guy his age.
He does, man. I mean, he's always stayed in shape. I still love my favorite Warrior story is still the fact that when he used to work out and he was in shape, he wouldn't allow himself to eat desserts. So for a treat, he would buy a cookie and crumble it up and just smell it.
That's awesome. I never heard that one.
Story, man. He'd just take a chocolate chip cookie, he'd grind it up in his hand, and he'd let the crumbs fall, and then he just put his nose over and absorb, all the aroma, and like, that's my treat for the day.
I love it. Did you ever interview him?
I have never talked to the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, me neither.
If you ever get to talk to him, don't talk politics.
No, not at all. I did see that one shoot interview that Mike did with him, and man, I felt sorry for Mike. Mike's asking me these questions. He says, "What are you asking me all these questions for?"
Yeah, stay clear about politics, and be direct and straightforward with the guy. Don't beat around the bush, but don't get into a field like that because, man, you steer him off that path, and you don't know where you're going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. What a character. So he's back for 2K14, and it seems like this is the new pattern for all these video games. I'm not a big video game guy, but of course I follow it because of what you and I do. But it seems like every game, every new edition, they bring back somebody. Like they brought Brock back for the last game. They have Mike Tyson in the one game. Who's coming back for 2K15? What's your prediction?
Pete Rose.
I'm sure they could get him now on the cheap.
Yeah. Oh, God. Pete will be like, all right, God, what time do you need me tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm available.
Right.
I mean, for anybody who doesn't know the story about Pete Rose, he hangs out in a casino in Vegas and he signs autographs every day.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, I remember like who's not in some of the games that they would want to put in there, like Andre the Giant's in a lot of their games.
Yeah.
Would it be somebody like an Owen Hart?
I'm thinking, and I know he's in a lot of their games, but I'm thinking there's going to be a point where Hulk Hogan comes back, and
yeah,
I don't even know if it doesn't happen while he's still with TNA, if he doesn't just cut a side deal with the video game company and make it happen. I mean, I can really see that happening sometime in the next 1 to 2 years.
I would like to see, and it's nothing against TNA, but I would like to see Hogan back in the WWE fold, just from a standpoint of you pay the guy a flat fee as a legend. I mean, he gets a higher legend deal than what everybody else does.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they start the WWE Network, he could be a big part of some different things that they do there. The money that you can make off doing truly behind-the-scenes, comprehensive DVD on his career that they've done with so many other guys would be astronomical. Be able to have that guy just around that occasionally made an appearance on a Raw or on a pay-per-view. He wouldn't show up all the time, but just having him in the fold and then be able to use him just for promotional things. He goes out on the road. He promotes your product. You can put him in a video game like this. That's something I would like to see. I mean, honestly, I'd like to see Flair do the same thing, but we know how unstable that he's been.
Yeah.
But those two guys should have that role, and that's where they should be at in their careers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You, my friend, have a real fascinating blog up on your website about Kurt Angle that I was reading earlier today, and great read. And you had titled it is How Great Could Kurt Angle Have Been? And the premise is, how great could he have been if he never left the WWE? And Brian, how great do you think he could have been?
Well, I think we'd be talking about him being like, when you talk about WWE superstars, I think you'd have him more in the forefront of being not only one of the greatest workers ever in wrestling, but you'd be talking about one of the all-time great WWE stars. Now, he's still fantastic. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, he was broken down, he was beaten up, and yes, he was. But there is something to being able to say, I stayed in WWE, I was a guy there for a while, for a long period of my career. I didn't leave. This is where I was. And yes, he needed some time off. I mean, who knows? I mean, if he could have gotten 6 months off, a year off or whatever, and stayed in the fold of the company. But you've got to remember the Kurt Angle of that career, because the way it is now, the amount of time that he spent in WWE is the same amount of time that he's been in TNA.
Yeah.
And yes, with TNA, you're getting the second half of his career, a guy that's already gone through the bumps and bruises of everything that he went through in training for the Olympics, and all the bumps that he took at that point in his career. And he's still been very good, but obviously he's not the performer that he once was when his early days with WWE. But I just still think that if he had never left there, we'd be talking about some of the things that he could have done and continued on with WWE. Because when you think of the great moments of Kurt Angle's career, you don't think of TNA. I mean, about the only thing that you really think of there is the lockdown match he had with Samoa Joe, and maybe the storyline angle that he had with Jeff Jarrett that was playing off.
I was going to say, I loved, it's so funny because these aren't two guys you'd expect to have these blowaway matches, but I loved his series with Jeff Jarrett. Anytime he wrestled Jeff Jarrett, I thought those matches were fantastic.
Absolutely. But for the most part, when you think of Kurt Angle's career, you think of what happened in WWE.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You think of the classic match he had with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. You think of the match that he had with Shane McMahon even. Think of the match he had with Angle.
Yeah.
Think of the storyline that he did with Austin. Even the comedy that was involved.
Yep.
I mean, you saw a guy in the back with a little hat on his head.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just so dynamic in that he was a serious kick-ass wrestler. He was also a guy that had so many different layers when it came to comedy and everything. And I just thought that we got so much better of a Kurt Angle. And I just wonder kind of what if he had never left, and especially if he had been given the time off that he wanted to where he could have gotten healthier.
Yeah, it's good stuff, and I would highly recommend going to check it out on Brian's site at BetweenTheRopes.com.
But it was funny when I was doing research for that, I started going, well, let me see, how long has he been in TNA?
Yeah.
And I was shocked to find out that almost a week he had been in the same, for each company for the same amount of time.
Yeah.
I was like, how crazy is that? I mean, you don't even think of that, but that's how long Angle's now been with TNA Wrestling. It's gone by very quickly.
It really has. It really has. You, my friend, were recently invited to the unveiling of the WWE Performance Center. Even got a chance to spend some time with Triple H. Tell us a little bit about it, and what was it like talking to the game?
That Performance Center is incredible. 26,000 square feet, and they did everything right from the standpoint that they splurged on everything. You walk in that facility, there's 7 rings. They've got one that's got extra pads for practicing moves off the top rope. Everything is geared up where there's light kits on everything, and there's a camera on everything. So that way they videotape it. If they ever want to do a live feed or send a video up to anybody anywhere, they can do it immediately. Mm-hmm. And they'll even do it in the back to where afterwards you go, you review your match. They got a big conference room, and they got this big table in there that they were talking about. That's just ridiculous. You go in these rooms, they edit NXT right there. They can edit other shows. They've got a promo room with a green screen where you can practice that. They've got the training facility there is incredible for what the doctor can do, to where the workout room, they've got everything you can imagine in the workout room. We didn't even get to go upstairs to where they have this big lounge area, and they've got this other area too where I guess you can sit down kind of at your own station, your own kind of cubicle, and you can pull up not only stuff that you've done or what's going on in the rings right now, but you can call up, I believe, any match that they have in their video library along with promos.
That's phenomenal.
And you can look at that, review it, and soak it all in as you continue your development to being a WWE superstar.
Wow. I'd love to get an internship there and just sit there and watch your old tapes all day.
I know, because we got to go around the bottom floor, but we didn't get to go upstairs. And now I really would have loved to have seen that. But they briefly talked about it. But it's just amazing, the amount of money that they were able to pump into that and do it the right way. I mean, I was just there, I think it was 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. And when they originally said, we're going to build this here. And that place was empty. There was no air conditioning. There was no nothing. And I had heard the rumor like they were shooting for August, but even that might have been a little bit of a stretch, get it done that quickly. Mm-hmm. And instead, they got it done in July.
Wow.
I mean, and it is done, and it is incredible.
Mm. And it's such a brilliant move on their part, because they're trying to go after these ex-athletes or even current athletes, and you try and sign a guy that's been playing in the NFL for 3-5 years, and he's used to an NFL lifestyle and going to these first-class training facilities, and then you take him to the old training center and you say, wait a minute, aren't you one of these top entertainment companies? I mean, now they go there, they see this elite training center, and I really do think it opens up a lot more opportunity as far as signing professional prospects.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that I asked Triple H about, and I even asked some other people about, is, yes, if you have a facility like this, it's going to not only help your current talent and their training, and there's so many different things that you can utilize and take advantage of, but obviously you want to use it as a recruitment tool to get other talents. But yeah. I do wonder if there's something that's kind of lost in the equation, and it's probably been lost for a little while, in having that old school mentality of, you learn on the job.
Yeah.
And that you go around, you work in different areas, you work in front of different crowds, you work different styles, and that's where you get your job training. But it's been a while since that's actually happened.
Yeah. I mean, old farts like you and me, we've been banging that drum for a long time, and unfortunately, it looks like it's just a different world out there than the world that we grew up watching wrestling in.
I mean, Chris Jericho literally is the last man of that guard.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan too. I give Daniel Bryan some credit. He traveled the world and worked different styles. He may be. I mean, Jericho on a bigger level, but Bryan may be one of those last ones as well. Yeah,
you're right there, because he did travel the world as well. But I mean, when you look at Jericho, this is a guy that it took him a while before he got to WWE. Briefly in ECW.
Yes.
He worked Mexico. He worked Japan. Mm-hmm. I mean, you name the independent territory, he worked there, man. And this guy that just kind of grinded through the system and got all that experience to where he is now. And you see what a talent that he is now, and that he's become he can be so good in the ring and that he can work with anybody. He can work different styles.
Yeah.
We see how good he is as a personality. That's part of who Chris is too, though. That's not just going to happen with everybody. Some guys it comes easier to than other people.
Yeah.
But you get that world experience, and in the long run, I think that can make you better. I mean, look at Chris Masters.
Yeah.
And that people have talked about how much better of a worker he is now because WWE said, we don't want you right now. So what did he do? He went out and got some world experience.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. I was putting the list of topics together for the podcast today, and I completely forgot that Damien Sandow won Money in the Bank. And
Yep.
I think Randy Orton's win and the angle with Daniel Bryan has completely overshadowed Sandow winning Money in the Bank. Do you think that there is long-term potential in Sandow? Do you think that he's just going to get swallowed up right now with everything else going on? Or do you think that there's actually money in this guy at some point?
I think at some point there is, but right now the emphasis is obviously going to be on Daniel Bryan and Cena and then also on Lesnar and Punk. So, I think it's going to be a while before he cashes in. I was really surprised on Raw that they had him lose.
Yeah.
Christian. I was like, I mean, that's kind of that typical WWE booking that a lot of us don't like.
Yeah.
That it's not going to cripple him or anything, but at the same time, it's like, this guy just took that next step, and he got that briefcase. And sooner or later, you believe he's going to cash that in, and odds are he's going to win the title. And if you're going to do that, give the guy a fair chance.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he has to win every match, but the night afterwards, and he's facing Christian, who's a very talented guy, but he's a mid-card guy. I mean, it's a match that he should win. Now, what we're going to see is, a feud between Sandow and Rhodes. I think it's going to be a very good feud. I mean, I like both of those guys a lot, and I hope that they get enough time and attention that they deserve, and we'll see how it plays off of that. But Sandow's an extremely talented guy. The one thing I don't think we've seen enough of when it comes to him is his actual in-ring work when it comes to being a singles guy and seeing how good he can be there and can he really hold a match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always thought that there was money in Cody when they had Legacy and they were breaking up and everybody was saying that the money was in DiBiase. I thought it was going to be in Cody. When they did that feud with him and Big Show last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
I saw that guy emerging, and it's just weird with Cody because every time he seems to take another step, he gets, he notches a little bit closer, and then he winds up taking 2 steps backwards.
Right. But, I mean, I think the one thing that people are looking at now when it comes to him is he's a great character, and the guy can talk.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you obviously see that with Sandow.
Yeah.
But, Cody can do it very well, too.
Yeah, definitely. Couple quick topics before we wrap things up. Stone Cold Steve Austin made some news, I think it was last week, when he was on the Busted Open show, and that he said he is healthy and ready to go if duty calls for WrestleMania 30. He did say that it has to be under the right circumstances. There's a lot of commitments involved, but he said physically he can do it. Do you think he's going to be on WrestleMania 30?
Well, I think it depends on who the opponent would be, and I think he really wants to wrestle Punk, and Punk obviously wants to do that. I think you could easily do that storyline, even if Punk is a babyface, of kind of the, you know what, you think you're good, but you're not good enough, against me because I'm Stone Cold, and both guys can kind of keep their persona. Punk wins the match, obviously. I think a couple things goes into this. How long of a time do they get to build up the match? Because the mic work between the two would be fantastic. How do you introduce it? Would they actually give them that much time to build it up? And I think you'd start that like right before, right after Royal Rumble. And the other thing is, too, what other matches are on the show? Because, Austin has got some ego, and rightfully so. He wants that to be a main event thing. I'm not saying it's going to close the show, but it's going to be damn close. And you already know that Cena's probably going to have, one of the top matches on that show, no matter who he faces.
Yeah.
And, Undertaker's going to have a top match, too. And we don't know who that's going to be. The belief right now is that it's going to be Undertaker against The Rock, unless Rock doesn't want to work it. And if he's not going to work it, then Undertaker against Brock Lesnar. Mm-hmm. But okay, so now go with the scenario of Rock works it. Okay, so now you've got Undertaker against The Rock. Who's Lesnar going to work against?
Right.
So, I don't think he wants us to be a scenario going, oh, yeah, I'm being promoted as one of the co-main events, but I'm actually 4th from the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote a blog last week, and my blog was titled that Austin Punk is not the right match to go with for WrestleMania. And I kind of took a look at the big picture, and I just think there is much more money. I don't know. I just don't think the worlds are aligning for an Austin Punk match at WrestleMania to do the kind of business that it should be able to do. Looking at the big picture, I think Austin Cena would be off the charts. I mean, talk about such a fun dynamic, two totally different characters, two totally different generations. I mean, you go back to the Rock Cena thing, but I mean, this is just a whole other dynamic right there. And then even an Austin Brock match as well. I don't know. I look at the big picture and I just see, I don't see the money. I mean, obviously there's money with Austin and anybody, but I think Austin and Cena would just be blow away.
I think it'd be very interesting. That would be another one of those kind of pass the torch kind of moments.
Yes.
I guess. I don't know if we'd ever see Lesnar against Austin because I really think Lesnar would be too physical for that match. That's one of the question marks I have when it comes to Lesnar ever working Taker, which
and Rock
I want to see.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that's going to be too physical for him. Yeah, that would be the other guy that makes sense unless they really wanted to do, and he wanted to do it, Austin against The Rock.
Yeah.
Which we've seen before, but it would be one of those like special attraction, for WrestleMania and having the two of the all-time legends hooking it up in the ring one more time.
Yep.
But a lot of people would complain about that going, well, you're going to have these other guys that are coming in and they're not on the road on a regular basis and they're stealing somebody else's spot. They're not even putting anybody else over and blah, blah, blah. And we hear that whole argument again.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if I was working in the WWE and I was a curtain jerker and I could either be on WrestleMania myself or wrestle in the opening match and have Austin or Rock or Brock headlining, show me the money. That's what I say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, though. If more people are watching that show, that's more potential eyeballs on you as well and more potential money for you for that show and for future shows.
Yeah, definitely. All right, final topic here. There were some rumors. There's always rumors about Sting going to the WWE. Dave Meltzer reported on his podcast that the indicator is that Sting is leaning towards going to the WWE when his contract expires. I wrote a blog on it, and I had a lot of TNA fans tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, that Sting would never go to the WWE. You think Sting goes to the WWE next year?
No. I don't. Now, I think Sting has always been intrigued by the idea, but I think he uses this as a leverage point, and I think he's been very enticed by it, and I think he's come close a couple times.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of this is just used for leverage, and I'm not saying that he's just lying to WWE. I think he really is intrigued, and you know what? If he did decide to go, I think that would be the end of his career. Like he'd go, he'd do a 2-month storyline, he'd do the match, and that would be it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we've talked about, too, when it comes to him possibly going over to WWE would be a match between him and Taker.
Yeah.
If I'm Undertaker, I don't want that match.
Me neither. It's funny you say that because I've said the same thing.
I don't want that match, man. Okay, what are some other potential matches I could have right now? John Cena, The Rock, Brock Lesnar. I'll take those.
Yep.
And plus, I mean, God bless Sting for all the work that he's done, and he's still in great shape out there, and he's still working hard. But you hear so many rumors about him forgetting spots or forgetting how a match is put together, or some people have questioned kind of his drive at this point of his career. Now, that might just be a thing where, you know what, he's been in TNA for a while. Maybe he's not totally intrigued by some of this stuff. It happens. I'm not going to call him out for that. We've seen it happen with plenty of other people where sometimes you need a change of scenery or you need time off to kind of recharge the batteries. But I mean, if you do not do Sting against Undertaker, who's he going to work against? I mean, if Rock is going to work that show, he's going to work Lesnar.
Yes.
I mean, I know Rock always kind of talked about working Sting as well, but I don't know who else he's going to work.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I said this a couple of years ago when those videos were playing a couple of years back when it was Triple H and they were talking about it being Sting and Undertaker. And I said, that's a match I just don't want to see, and I don't even think Undertaker wants it. He's raised the bar so much in the last couple of years with ever since the Shawn Michaels matches, with these high standard of WrestleMania matches. I don't think it's physically possible to get a match out of Sting that good. I mean, could they go in there for 5 minutes and just blow it out of the water? I guess they could, but I'm not an avid TNA watcher. I'll be the first to admit. But from what I've seen from Sting, he's good and he could still put a match together. But I don't see a guy that could go in there and steal the show with the Undertaker.
I agree, man, and that's the thing. You got to be able to bring it on that level because it's not only WrestleMania. It's not only you're talking about the streak on the line. I mean, you're talking about a match with Undertaker where, yes, in the past, some of them have not been that great. But the way that he's been working these WrestleMania matches for the last 5, 6, 7 years these have been show-stealing efforts out there.
Yep, absolutely. With that, I think great time to wrap things up here. And Brian, the floor is yours. Tell everybody out there where they can see you, where they can hear you, where they can read you.
Well, my address here in Atlanta. For anybody that wants to go, you can just check me out online. It's betweentheropes.com. We got the website there. A lot of podcasts that are up available there. Even the link to our iTunes feed is there, so you can subscribe. And then you can follow Between the Ropes on Twitter. It's just Twitter at Between the Ropes. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Brian Fritz. I'm out there on Facebook as well. Facebook is Brian Fritz, and Facebook for Between the Ropes is just Between the Ropes as well. So it's all out there. It's very easy to find. The only thing that's more difficult is the YouTube channel, and that's BTR Fritz, because some bozo already grabbed Between the Ropes, and I made the mistake years ago of doing a lot of stuff on YouTube and using BTR Fritz. So you can do that. I hate it when people grab my name.
Yeah.
And then nobody's using it now, and you can't grab it because YouTube has a policy where you can't do that.
YouTube, man, they're tricky. I first started playing around with the YouTube channel a couple years ago. Well, probably more than a couple now. I throw some old radio shows on there and stuff, but it was under an old username. So then I launched the Pro Wrestling Radio / Camel Clutch blog channel, but you can't really import your old videos over, and just what a cluster.
Right. Like, I've got a couple other names that I could use.
Yeah.
But it's like you cannot transfer everything over. And if you're sitting there going, well, I've already kind of established this. I got a lot of content.
Yes.
And I got subscribers. It's like you got to start over from scratch. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And you could say, okay, it's more of my brand. But like I said, somebody already grabbed Between the Ropes, and they're not even using it now. But you still cannot grab it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can petition YouTube for that or what exactly I need to do. But that's where the YouTube channel is. All the links are on betweentheropes.com. For all the links are right there. There's even a link for the YouTube channel right there. And then plus any video that's posted on the YouTube channel, we've got on the website as well. You just go up to the menu and click videos, and it'll be right there.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Brian, I want to thank you for being the first to sit in the Meet the Pro Wrestling Press podcast. I hope you'll come back because this is a lot of fun. And I mean, you and I, we've done shows together in the past, and I always have a really good time sitting there and shooting it with you. So hopefully we can do this again.
Absolutely, man. I'm hoping I get a participation ribbon too.
Yes, absolutely. It's in the mail. Check's in the mail.
Yay!
Yes. All right, there you go. The first edition of Meet the Pro Wrestling Press podcast.